There's tons of pens all over the place. Can you run the slide? Okay.
Everybody deals with pine needles. Pine needles. We got oak. I've been using oak leaves, so I'm worried about the acidity. Enough other browns in there. I'm seeing actually that's right. It's a lot of weight.
This is my first time. What are these direct lines?
Right. Like, do I need to go to these or can I take a break?
We'll give people a few minutes to
Yes.
technically broadcasting. Is it 10:30? Yeah, we have water in. I know the last session we're in that. Okay.
Right there, I'll ask her.
She's right here. Okay.
Testing 1 2, check check. Testing 1 2.
All right, thank you. Not too many folks in the room, but so folks are saying, come on up. I know that we have a few online, but come closer, come closer. I just met Joe yesterday, all right? Come on, Joe, we're friends.
We're friends.
Yeah, unfortunately, they scheduled this slot with 2 other directors, so yeah, and it's kind of hard. I wish I wouldn't have done that, but oh well.
Testing 1 2.
I know. I was just complaining to other folks right now. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I know there's folks online. My name is Roberto Rodriguez. I am not the director of the Enforcement Compliance Assurance at EPA Region 9. Amy Miller is our director, and she unfortunately had a scheduling conflict, so she asked me to attend today's presentation. So we're going to talk about all things enforcement for all medias, not just drinking water, Joe, so other items as well. Let's go to the next slide. And for folks on the line, please feel free to enter questions to the chat and feel free to enter questions here as well. So some of the things that I wanted to cover during today's presentation is to talk about EPA's new National Fire Enforcement Compliance Initiatives, or NECIs. You're going to hear me say that throughout the presentation. Talk about work that we accomplished last year in terms of inspections and enforcement, and get all medias for enforcement: water, air, waste, toxics, and so on. And then also just opportunities about building capacity with the tribes, and then just other highlights. Next slide. I am going to turn here because my computer is still not up and running, and I can't see that far. So we just completed a cycle of NECIs, again, National Enforcement Compliance Initiatives, this past year. And these were the areas of focus where EPA as an agency, not just Region 9, focused in their inspections and enforcement efforts, and really looking at communities that are overburdened and vulnerable. And so some of the focus areas that we looked at this past year were, areas of air, haz waste, and water, both Drinking Water and Clean Water Act. Next slide. Oh, okay. And I want to make sure that I get folks out in time before lunch starts. No, it's not your fault. Yeah, my computer's not acting right either, so I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know if it's the connection here. Oh, really? That hurts. And sir, what tribe are you from? And where?
Nevada.
Oh, Nevada. All right. What's your name?
Gary.
Gary. Nice to meet you, Gary. All right, are we back on track? Okay, we're back on track. So looking forward to new national enforcement compliance initiatives. We included two new areas of concern, or priorities, I should say. One is climate change. The other one is addressing PFAS, as folks have been hearing a lot about PFAS. Actually, there's three. And then protecting communities from coal ash contamination. Sometimes you'll hear it as CCR, coal contaminant residuals. And then we modified one particular area, which is air toxics, and then we'll get more into the details on this in a bit. And then we continued drinking water as a priority. And drinking water has been a priority for the last few years. And why are we doing these NECIs? And you'll see in our EPA website, and I did pull information directly from the website, so I was clear on messaging. And EPA focuses its compliance enforcement in the most serious violations through developing NECIs, in addition to doing everything else that we're doing. So even though there's not a particular media here, it doesn't mean that we're not doing that other work. So a lot of folks ask about, well, what about pesticides? Well, we're still doing pesticide enforcement work. It doesn't mean that we're not doing that work. Next slide. So these are a little bit more details on the NECIs. And again, looking at the first three new NECIs, climate change, PFAS, and coal ash. Again, we're trying to consolidate our inspections. Welcome, come in. Some water folks from Region 9. Trying to consolidate our inspections and enforcement tools and resources to address these issues in overburdened or vulnerable communities. And that's a theme that you're going to hear throughout my presentation today. looking at those communities, looking at EJ areas, not necessarily that tribes are EJ areas, but these are just resources that we can bring to help address some of these issues. So on climate change, we're looking at inspecting, doing more inspections, more enforcement at oil and gas facilities, landfills, and facilities that manage or produce HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons. And then for PFAS, really looking at the manufacturers and the contributors of that contamination and see where EPA can step in to stop that contribution or to go after responsible parties through our Superfund program. On coal ash or CCR, again, looking at communities that are vulnerable or overburdened and doing more inspections and enforcement at these facilities. Nationwide, there are 300 facilities. Welcome, come on in. And so we're going to be focusing on those areas, not just Region 9. Again, this is all agency-wide. Next. And these are continued or modified National Enforcement Compliance Initiatives, NECIs, for folks that just walked in. These are EPA priorities that we're going to continue in FY24 through 27. Drinking water. And again, we have some water folks here from our water division. We're looking at community water systems that have health-based violations that are in overburdened or vulnerable communities. We did this in the last cycle. I think we're really successful. So that's something that we're going to continue going forward. Chemical accidents. Imagine all the chemical facilities or facilities that manage chemicals across the country. And really this priority is to address those facilities to prevent any kind of accidents. And again, looking at communities that are in vulnerable or overburdened areas. And then last but not least, air toxics. We are trying to address hazardous pollutants in those areas, and through inspection and enforcement, we're hoping to elevate this work in Region 9 and throughout the agency. Next slide, please. So again, the NECIs doesn't mean that we're not doing our other work in the agency. And we just got out of the presentation that Water Division did on lead service line inventory. And so folks that don't know about that, there's some people here that can help you if you have any questions on lead service inventory. Lead continues to be a high priority in Region 9, not only for drinking water, but for air and land. So something that we have been very active on, for example, is lead-based paint. Looking at contractors that actually do renovations, looking at homes that they're renovating. Are these folks certified or not to handle that type of waste? So that's an area that we're going to continue to look at. And then again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, environmental justice is going to be something that's going to be included in any work that we do on the inspections and enforcement side, targeting inspections in EJ communities and really taking enforcement action, aggressive enforcement action where needed in these communities, because they're already dealing with so many environmental factors and stressors. So those are the communities that we really want to address. Next slide. And community engagement. Anybody from Navajo Nation here? No. Recently on the wastewater side, our enforcement division engaged with several communities in Navajo Nation to complete some wastewater actions that were kind of in the works for a while. And so we made a big effort to reach out to these communities and engage with them. And some of the communities are also referenced as chapter houses. Something that I've heard kind of generally throughout the conferences is that EPA should do a better job engaging with the community. Pick up the phone. Don't just send out an email or don't send out a flyer. And I think that that's really good feedback for us. And that's something that we're trying to address now and going into the future. Just making sure that we're all available moving forward. Eastern Coachella Valley, Riverside County, Southern California area, within the Cabazon and Torres Martinez tribe. We've been very involved in some drinking water matters. These are mobile home parks that are within the exterior boundaries of the Torres Martinez tribe. They're privately owned. They're not owned by the tribe. We've observed high levels of arsenic. We're talking in the hundreds. And so really working with the tribe, BIA, local, state, county partners to engage with them and to try to figure out how we get through some of those tricky issues. Our regional administrator, Martha Guzman, has been involved with that work. She's been a great supporter. So we're super appreciative of her involvement. And through that work, we developed a task force where we are going and doing technical assistance. There's been POUs that have been installed. We're continuing to do inspections and we're continuing to do enforcement. Unfortunately, we're still finding more mobile home parks that we previously were not aware of. And I think nationally, that's something that we're looking at as an agency, looking at mobile home parks that might be on tribal land. Maybe they're being regulated by the state. Are they? And that's where the jurisdictional issues really come into play. Next slide. This is just a breakdown of inspections that we've done on tribal land in federal fiscal year 23. And so there were a total of 44 inspections broken out by different media. As you can see, drinking water was the primary primary media. And we'll do a more detailed breakdown of each of those inspections here. Next slide. So for underground injection, I'm sorry, not underground injection, underground storage tanks and Safe Drinking Water Act, we broke them out just by tribe. I don't know if anybody is from these tribes. I think we went out to Garrington. You said Garrington, right? Yeah, we went out to Garrington. I don't see Garrington on here. Maybe it's on the, maybe we did that the previous year, but we went out there not too long ago. So we're going to continue doing this work in terms of drinking water inspections. USTs is something that EPA has direct implementation authority to do on tribes, and we're always very active in that area. Next slide. Again, just breaking down inspections by media and some of the places that we visited in federal fiscal year 23. I think we've done a really good job in trying to get out to different parts of the region. And again, this work is going to continue going in FY24 and beyond. Next slide. I wanted to kind of share some of the work that we've done at Eastern Coachella Valley. Again, I just mentioned these mobile home parks. The folks that are behind you have been heavily involved in this work, and we're really appreciative of all the outreach and technical assistance that you all have done. This is a very unique situation, something that we started learning about more back in 2019, where you have privately owned mobile home parks within the exterior boundaries of a tribe that are on fee land. So it's been described to me by my attorneys as like the worst law exam ever, because there's a mishmash of laws, types of ownership, regulatory authorities. And so what we discovered is that these mobile home parks were actually being regulated by Riverside County for many years. And they didn't know that that these mobile home parks were actually within the exterior boundaries of the tribe. And I keep on saying exterior boundaries of the tribe because that is a legal term. So Torres Martinez is a very checkerboarded tribe. So you have a mix of different types of land ownership. And what we found is that these mobile home parks were actually located within the boundary, meaning that the county or the state didn't have any authority to regulate them. And so we met with the county. The county ended up transferring about now 20 mobile home parks that they were previously regulating and that were on actually Torres Martinez land. Again, Torres Martinez, the tribe, does not own these mobile home parks. These are privately owned for business. Some of the owners live on site, some of them don't, but it is considered a business. Recently, we just found Aguirre Mobile Home Park, and there's just another one that we found, I think, last week, Sanchez Mobile Home Park. There's a question right here. Maybe can we get a microphone?
I'm sure I can talk loud enough.
There's folks on the line, though, that yeah, there's one over here. We'll get that. Because I think folks on the line won't be able to hear you. We'll get that microphone for you.
I was just wondering how they ended up having the right to locate on a reservation. land?
Yeah,
Trust land?
so, yeah,
Because
yeah, though that's a good question. You know, I don't know Indian law that well. This is just what has been explained to me. And then for folks that attended the plenary session, I don't know if anybody heard Rebecca Sosi. She's a law professor at University of Arizona. I thought she did a phenomenal job. So I believe that these properties were sold by the tribe to private individuals decades ago when that was actually possible. And so that ownership was transferred to private landowners. I understand that that is no longer possible. I can't remember the year, and I'm not an attorney. So that process or that way of doing business was stopped. I want to say it was in the 50s because there was so much tribal land that was being sold off to private landowners. And this is why Torres Martinez, partly, I guess, is why it's so checkerboarded. And there are, at least 20 um, fee land areas and or lots. So there may be more, but that's something that we're continuing to investigate. And it's not unique to Torres Martinez. I was just speaking to Heidi Brow, who's the environmental director at Paula Tribe. We had a similar situation where they had a privately owned mobile home park within the exterior boundaries of the tribe, and we took an enforcement action against them for drinking water and failing septic system. So again, not unique to Torres Martinez. We can do a whole separate session on this, and but I'm not the person to do it.
Getting into a lot.
Yes, yes.
I also work for Paula,
Oh,
and
great.
a lot of times it's if someone has an allotment, they can either run it or they sell it, or like you said back in the day, other people would just come in. And so we have our reservation isn't nearly as checkerboarded, but there are in holdings within the reservation that through whatever mechanism are no longer in control by the tribe. So then, like you said, the county won't regulate the lands because it's within the tribal boundaries, but we don't have jurisdiction because we don't own the land. So it's very messy, very
Yeah.
gray area.
We should do this for next year. We'll do a whole separate session on that. I think that would be really good. Let's move on because I don't want to hold you up for lunch, and we have only about 9 more minutes. I want to make sure that I answer any other questions too. Next slide. So capacity building, this is just a breakdown of different areas where we've been involved in different medias in trying to provide on-the-job training for tribal inspectors, where, the tribal inspectors are eyes and ears out there. So we have been providing on-the-job training through different methods. Sometimes we do joint inspections. Sometimes we have contractors that go out. So this is an area where we're trying to get inspector credentials for tribal inspectors to do inspections within their own respective tribe. Next slide. This is one of the mobile home parks that I just mentioned at Torres Martinez. This is just, there's 2 case studies, and D&D mobile home park, high levels of arsenic. We're talking about hundreds. They have this treatment system, but it's unfortunately the media broke through. They're trying to replace it. We issued an enforcement order against the owner of the park who does not live there, but is they are a native of Torres Martinez, I understand. And so we've been working with the owner to try to get the system back into compliance. Thankfully, the treatment system, the media was replaced, so arsenic levels are again below the standard. But at the time that it broke through, we were seeing arsenic levels in the hundreds, and the standard is 10 parts per billion. Next slide. Just a continuing slide on D&D. So these were some of the requirements of the order. One of the main areas that we try to focus on while we're working with the system is to have the owner or the operator provide alternative water until the system is back into compliance. Obviously, we don't want those folks to be drinking that water or using that water for cooking or brushing their teeth. You have vulnerable populations, you have older folks, you have kids and that sort of thing. So that's something that we always require in our emergency orders, is to provide alternative water. Next. This is a case study switching over to Hopi tribe, and I had the honor and privilege to inspect Hopi when I was a drinking water inspector a long time ago. And back in 2016, we issued an administrative order on consent, or an AOC, to several villages within the Hopi tribe. Again, these are Hopi villages not owned by the tribal government, but within the tribe. And these were villages that were owned and operated by like a village board. So they would have like a president or different leaders for each of those villages. And so we worked with our partners at Indian Health Service and our water division to try to consolidate these villages. And, I feel through our enforcement actions, we put a lot of pressure on IHS to push this work forward. So the plan was to install a consolidated line, I should say, and using 2 compliant wells. They drilled those wells. Thankfully, the levels of arsenic were low or below the standard, and they were able to install lines through basically through the Hopi, all the Hopi tribe, connecting all of these villages. And that just happened not too long ago, just within this past year. There's a few villages that we're still working with. They're still negotiating with the utility to try to connect, because now they're going to have to pay a certain rate for that water. And so that work is going forward. But I think this is a success story. I've been doing this work for a long time, and it's probably the first project that I've seen for a tribal program, a tribe, to have such a large consolidated project to connect all these systems. Next slide. Yeah, this is just a little bit more. There's a picture of the lines going in here. But again, just a little bit of the history of this project. I would say IHS, I give them a lot of credit. Sometimes we don't give them a lot of credit, but on this case, IHS really came through. They provided a lot of funding. Our own water division, through its tribal set-aside funds, also provided a lot of money for this project. So thankfully, we're going to serve, now it's going to serve up to, 1,000 people or more. And that area, I imagine, is going to continue to grow. Next slide. I think that's it. I wanted to zoom through because we have 5 more minutes. See if folks had any questions, either here, maybe start in the room, or on the line. No questions. I did get a question. Can I use your question from yesterday, Joe? So Joe and I met yesterday, and your tribe, can you remind me what tribe you're from again?
Yeah, EPA Nation, San Isabel.
EPA Nation from St. Isabel, so here in San Diego area. And he was asking about 3 systems that are currently not public water systems because they don't meet the threshold of a public water system, meaning that they have less than 15 connections or less than 25 people. And he said, well, what if the tribe is willing to do all the sampling and all the work that PWS would normally get to do, or have to do, I should say. And because I think what you're looking for is just additional funding to help. Right. So infrastructure funding. And I mentioned to Joe yesterday, I was like, normally people that we work with don't want to be a PWS because they don't want to be regulated. But I see where you're coming from. I mean, you're trying to get more funding for the system. And I think the answer that we gave you is no, we can't do that just because you don't meet the threshold. But there are other maybe outlets, resources that you could use for infrastructure funding, such as maybe USDA rural. We talked about IHS, and you said IHS.
And then the other one that's really promising right now is the California Water Board.
Yeah, and California Water Board. So our folks again here have worked very closely with SAFER, and California has a lot of money right now. So I would highly recommend that you reach out to California on that. Oh, there you go. And I know they're here too. So that's all I had. Unless there's any questions. Thanks for coming. I know we're competing. Laura Eber of our TIPD division and Tomas Torres and I all presenting at the same time. So I wish it wouldn't have been like that, but that's just the way it worked out. I'm so sorry. That's the way it worked. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming. Thank you. And I'll get you on lunch. I know you're from Holland.
Yeah.
So do you work with Heidi?
Yeah.
Okay. I talked to her yesterday.